I recently made a few videos that might have given the impression that I'm overly critical of aspiring polyglots. But before I did my PhD in linguistics, learning languages was the main reason I got interested in the study of linguistics at all. My good friend and colleague, the multi-talented Mr. Christopher Hall, told me that linguistics is like seeing the Matrix. And he's right. So today, I'm going to tell you the top 5 tools and concepts for language learners, especially those of you who want to learn multiple languages better and faster, that I learned while doing a PhD in linguistics at one of the best respected linguistics departments in the world. So take a second to like and subscribe, and let's get into it. I'm Taylor Jones, and this is Language Jones. Some of these may seem counterintuitive, but I promise that if you invest even just a little time with these tips, they'll massively accelerate your language learning. And the last 2 will supercharge the rest of them, so be sure to stick around to the end. Very few people know about these tricks, in part because, weirdly, not all linguists are interested in actually speaking to other people. They'd rather analyze language. In fact, how do you tell the extroverted linguist? They look at your shoes when they're talking to you instead of their own. I was once at a linguistics conference and somebody asked me if it was a kyphosis and scoliosis conference. That's not to say that there aren't very gregarious linguists, especially in sociolinguistics, but some of the tips I'm about to share with you are not widely known because they're only really known by people who don't use them to their full potential. So in this video, I'm going to cover 1. Use the blank alphabet. 2. Always blank the blank of your language. 3. Throw out spelling rules and blank using blank. 4. Long-term learning is all about optimizing your approach to blank. And 5. Language is inherently blank. Ignore at your own risk. I'll also add a bonus tip at the end of this video, so be sure to stick around for that. Number 1. Use the International Phonetic Alphabet. I'm not the first to say this, and the value of using the IPA as a teaching tool is well established in the academic literature. What's different is what you'll do with it in number 3. You don't have to learn or use the whole thing. In fact, most linguists couldn't tell you all the symbols off the top of their head. Not sure that I could. So only use the subset that's relevant to your language. But the IPA is an incredible tool. It assigns a unique symbol to meaningfully different sounds. For consonants, you get the placement in the mouth, the manner of articulation. Does airflow stop as in ba, a, ba, or is it obstructed as in fa, a, fa, or is it vacuumed in as in the ingressive ba, a, ba? And whether it's voiced, ba, a, ba, or your vocal cords don't vibrate, pa, a, pa. Most of the symbols should make intuitive sense, by the way. For vowels, you get whether the body of the tongue is front or back and high or low, and whether the lips are rounded. When your tongue is very high in front in your mouth, you get E, represented with this obvious symbol. When it's the same sound and your lips are rounded, you get U, represented with this little dude. There's also diacritics for Greeky phonation, breathy phonation, aspiration, and the clicks in words like Zulu, Angi, Ondi, as well as marks indicating tone. There's an obvious use for this and a less obvious one. The obvious use is accent work. If you're really good at the IPA, you can use very detailed descriptions to hear a language come out of your mouth that you don't speak. Cool. Additionally, you'll never find yourself wondering what is meant when a textbook says something like, it's like the E in bed. I have a textbook for Zulu that assumes that you have a South African accent. I don't. It says E in Zulu, quote, has 2 pronunciations. When followed by the vowel I or U, it's pronounced somewhat as in bed, e.g. tengile. When followed by the vowel A, its pronunciation is much like that of the A in cat, e.g. leta. If I read the book and pronounce those vowels the way I pronounce those words, I'll pronounce Zulu wrong, since I say bed and cat and South Africans say something a little bit closer to bade and ket. The other use of the IPA is where it really shines, and that's in tip number 3. But first, number 2. Always analyze the paradigms of your language. What do I mean by analyze the paradigms? It sounds boring. I mean don't just memorize things like conjugations by rote. Let's take an example from French. The way I initially studied French in a classroom was that we were made to run through a list of conjugations. How do you conjugate finir, meaning to finish? Je finis, tu finis, ils allons finir, nous finissons, vous finissez. Ils finissent. But what's actually going on there? The first 3 are singular, and they're all pronounced the same, fini. The others all have endings, but they all have an S. Someone who's into the subfield of linguistics, usually called distributed morphology, might say fini is the root. It doesn't change, and it carries the main meaning of the verb. S is a plural marker, maybe, and there are suffixes for the first person plural on and the second person plural e. Later they might adjust what they think the S is doing. That really doesn't matter for us as language learners. Let's take a different example and you'll see how this works. Keeping with finir, to finish, let's look at the future. Finirai, finira, finira, finiront, finirez, finir. Notice anything? The future forms all have that R. But if you know any French, you might notice another interesting pattern that comes out of a historical process that affected the development of the French language. You have the root fini, the R doing something, and then what looks a lot like the verb to have. J'ai, tu as, il a, nous avons, vous avez, ils ont. This stuff happens in a lot of languages. Hebrew past tense kind of looks like the pronouns are just tacked onto the end of the verb, if you squint. Recognizing these patterns makes memorizing and internalizing language so much faster. But this is even better when you use both 1 and 2 together. Number 3, throw out the spelling rules and analyze using the IPA. I have this book called The Real Ultimate French Review and Practice. It's pretty good. Link to purchase below. My only complaint about it is that it keeps calling things irregular that aren't irregular. There's just spelling rules for historical reasons. Keeping with French, let's look at to eat. Let's actually not look at mange. Instead, I'm going to look at convaincre, to convince. So looking at the book here, they have je convainc, tu convainc, il a l'on convainc, nous convainquons, vous convainquez, ils convainquent. They draw a lot of attention to the spelling differences between the singular and the plural parts of this paradigm. But let's look at this in IPA. Suddenly the entire paradigm is completely regular. And here's how finir looks. And while I'm at it, here's how to eat in Hebrew in the past tense. I cannot emphasize enough just how much easier these 3 tips used together make learning a language. Languages are interlocking systems of sound and structure, and if you understand the structure, you have a blueprint. Languages are interlocking systems of sound and structure, and if you understand the structure, you have a blueprint for success. I like to think of it as a mobile. Once you have structure, you can hang all your vocabulary on it. And as much as we think about spelling rules being important and foreign scripts looking cool, language is all about how sounds fit together. And writing is what linguists sometimes call a secondary technology. It's not primary, sound is, and it's not language. It's a very imperfect way of recording language. Using the IPA to analyze the patterns of a language isn't perfect, but it eliminates a lot of the noise and makes understanding the underlying systems much easier. These first 3 tips may be annoying to those of you who just want to speak to people, but you'll be able to say a lot more, a lot faster if you understand, really understand, the structure of the language that you're studying. The bonus tip at the end of the video will tell you a little bit more about how to do exactly that. Number 4, language learning is all about optimizing your approach to memory. This is the pivot from analysis to retention. And this pivot is one reason why most linguists I know don't speak a lot of other languages. There's tons of material available in the science of memory, everything from the book Moonwalking with Einstein to the excellent tips that Gabriel Weiner gives in his book Fluent Forever, like using mnemonics for noun gender, for instance, feminine words bursting into flames, hokey mnemonics, in the summer I fly kites, pairing visual and auditory input with your study, and of course, using some form of spaced repetition. And most importantly, recognize that remembering is about forgetting. This means don't beat yourself up if you forget something, just reactivate those neurons, baby. There's also levels to this, so passive recognition is not the same as active recall. This is the stuff I think Polyglot YouTube generally gets right. Novelty also works, so if you want to memorize that die hand, die Hand in German is feminine, and your mnemonic for feminine nouns is that they're on fire, here's an image nobody's ever seen before, generated by DALL-E 2 of exactly that. Number 5. Language is inherently social. Ignore this at your own risk. Humans are primates, and primates are incredibly social mammals. I won't pretend to understand why this is the case, but there's something fundamentally different that happens when you try to use a language with another person instead of, say, an app. Words you learn in conversation, you retain easier. Words you forget and actively attempt to recall in front of another ape that's just watching you and waiting for you, those stick with you forever. I use italki to talk with native speaker coaches and teachers, link in the comments, and in one lesson in Hebrew, I forgot the word for soon. I had learned it on Duolingo, but it didn't really stick, even though I had analyzed it and I knew it was basically in nearby. Now, bekarov is seared into my memory. There's a lot of psycholinguistic research on this, but basically, talking with people supercharges your learning. I know, for all you introverts with social anxiety, this is terrible news. But hey, there's always academic linguistics, or as I think of it, word Sudoku. I'm about to give you my bonus tip, but now is a great time to remind you to like and subscribe and leave me a comment for the algorithm telling me about the most embarrassing time you forgot a word or mixed up words. Like the time my French aunt visited the US for the first time and said that she needed to go have a douche. The bonus is 2 points in one. Remember that the grammar of a language is finite, and don't fall into the trap of thinking that some of it is advanced and some of it is beginner. It's all important for communication, and if you spend all your time on the subjunctive because you think it's more advanced and memorize increasingly obscure idioms, on va discuter à fleuret moucheté, you won't be an effective communicator, even if you feel really advanced. The inverse of this is true too. Sticking with French, if you don't learn the subjunctive because it's advanced, there will be very basic things that you can't say. One of the key concepts in modern linguistics is that of a generative grammar. This means that you have finite rules, but you can generate infinite sentences with them. Get a grammar of whatever language you're studying, and take your time, but learn it all. How many of these were you already doing? Leave me a comment and let me know which ones you'll work into your language routine. If you like what I'm doing with the channel, you should have already liked and subscribed, so you might as well join my Patreon. Thanks to my single patron, Anders Torgerson, who immediately canceled his patronage. I appreciate that brief moment that we had on November 23rd, and it's the thought that counts. Let's see if anyone can break the one-day patronage record. Until next time,